This week on the Ed Talk, we bring you From Struggles to Strength, real-life success stories. Join us as we explore how vulnerable teens overcome incredible odds to achieve success, featuring powerful stories of resilience and triumph that will inspire and uplift. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss the rest of this episode.
Educators need to know, educators can look at students and say, hey, my student can succeed, or have that belief that they can, no matter what their circumstances are. And I remember when I became a teacher, I was always positive with my students. I always stayed after school 2-3 days a week for an hour. I didn't ask for pay. I just stayed because I wanted them to have a place to come do homework, to avoid gangs. They used to bus kids in from a poorer area, a lot of gang affiliation. So I gave them a place to go. I helped them with their homework. So those were the qualities that he taught me. And I said, if I'm going to be a teacher, I want to be like him. Words have the power to hold you back, or they have the power to lift you up.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Ed Talk. I'm your host, Jeremy Brooks, and today we have a truly inspiring guest with us, Adele Alvarez. Not only is she an accomplished author and public speaker, but she's also a dedicated educator with over 20 years of experience. Adele, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it, and I can't wait.
I noticed that your book, Follow Your Heart, A Guide for Teens, it's been receiving some amazing reviews. How does it feel to see your work have such an impact?
I'm excited. I always said, when I went into teaching, if I could just inspire one student, that was what I was, looking to do. And it feels really good to know that now I'm inspiring a lot of people with my book and my story.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. And folks, we have plenty more on her book later on. We're going to share a lot more about it throughout the episode. We're so excited. I heard you did a trip recently. You just got back. How was your trip? Did you enjoy it?
Our school started AVID a couple of years ago for elementary. And so we went with a group of teachers to the AVID conference in San Diego.
And how was the weather down there? How was the trip? Did you drive? Did you fly?
We flew there, but we always hit beautiful weather when we go to San Diego, and this time it was gray. But the beauty, I'm a baseball fan. I love San Francisco Giants. So
Go Giants.
and so the Padres, I wish I would have gone because they were playing the Oakland A's. But the hotel we were at had a rooftop, like a bar area. And so we could see right into the stadium. So I got to see like a tie game with the Padres hitting a home run. So it was amazing.
No way. That is so cool. You got to DM me later on that hotel. That sounds like fun.
It was amazing. So that I would definitely go back there because you don't have to pay to see a game.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, that's wonderful to hear. So let's get started. All right. So for today's episode, again, as I said, we've got a very special guest with us, someone who has made a significant impact in the field of education. She is an educator that has over 20 years of experience. She's made a significant impact in the field of education. She has an inspiring story to share with us today. Adele, she's an author of the book, Follow Your Heart. It is a guidebook for teens. We'll talk more about this book and where you could get it. And of course, we've got some incredible and inspiring stories from her book as well. But we're so excited to have her on the show. By the way, I could not put the book down. I didn't get to read all of it yet. I read most of it, but I was absolutely hooked, and I cannot wait to read the rest of it. She earned her bachelor's degree in English from San Jose State University, and she holds a master's degree in education from CSU East Bay. She's currently serving as a principal at an elementary school. Adele's journey is one of resilience and determination. Despite attending 4 high schools, facing numerous personal challenges, she persevered and emerged stronger, driven by a desire to give back to her community and inspire others. And she really is inspiring. She's faced many obstacles growing up, yet she never let those challenges define her. Instead, she used them as fuel to drive forward. Her commitment to education and her passion for helping others succeed, it's evident in everything she does. She wanted to teach and give back to her community and inspire teens to pursue their goals and dreams. And she has certainly done that. And we're so happy to have her here on the show today. Don't go anywhere, folks. I have an incredible show for you today, right here on the Ed Talk.
Welcome to the Ed Talk with your host, Jeremy Brooks. At the Ed Talk, we are uniting education's top thinkers and leaders. The Ed Talk is America's true education talk show.
All right, welcome back to the Ed Talk. Adele, thank you again so much for joining us today. Could you start by telling us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it?
It's really telling my story from the time I was born up until the time I graduated from high school. So being a Mexican American first generation, person growing up in the Bay Area, and I had attended 4 high schools, and it was a teacher who changed my life to become an educator. And I wanted to come and give back to my community. And part of what kind of inspired this, I was teaching an English class, and I had 2 students that went out one night, and there was a drive-by. One of them got killed. The other one survived, but he was wounded. And the third one was supposed to be in the car with them, and his mom didn't let him go out that night. And so he kind of came and shared the story about what had happened, and we both sat on the steps in front of my classroom and cried. And I told him, hey, instead of looking at this as a heavy loss, why don't you turn it around to inspire you to become a better person, to do something different. You were given an opportunity. And then I realized that students don't always have somebody to talk to, or they don't know how to overcome some of those challenges. And when I was teaching at that time, there weren't a lot of SEL curriculum or a lot of support services like we have now. And so, I thought if I could share my story, hopefully it would inspire someone who was kind of facing a struggle like mine or that student to turn their life around and know that anything is possible.
Thank you for sharing that. That student knew that they could come to you and trust you. And it sounds like had a huge impact on that student. Is he one of the students that you wrote about in the book, by the way?
He's the one that I actually based. There's only one poem in the whole book, and I'm not a poet, so but that was the only poem I ever wrote, and it was about just kind of praying for the ones that stick around and survive, that have to kind of create a life for themselves and improve. But I actually mentored a student who was also gang affiliated, and he went to a military boot camp, and I had been asked to mentor him. And I call him Ivan in the book. But his mother had said, hey, will you mentor him? And I said, sure, what does that mean? And she said, oh, just a couple of phone calls. It's only a 1-year commitment. And he actually celebrated his 10th year anniversary of graduating from high school. And I'm still his mentor.
Oh,
So
that's
him
amazing.
and his best friend. And so I mentored both of them, and just seeing, the successes. His friend graduated, with my support with a business degree from San Jose State. And my other one, Ivan, he actually became a welder. But that's kind of the reason why I call the book Follow Your Heart, because as long as you pursue what you love, it doesn't matter whether it's in education or it's a blue collar job, a trade. If it's what you love, then I think you should do it. And so those 2 students taught me a lot.
I wanted to ask you more about the experience that you had at the all-girls Catholic school, which you write about in your book. What were some of the key challenges you faced, and how did you navigate through those?
Well, I grew up, my mom was a single mom, and I talk about that in the book. And she was raising my brother, she was raising me, and she wanted me to have a good education. And so she put me in an all-girl Catholic high school. But the challenge was there wasn't any support. I was a minority. There wasn't a lot of academic support. I would try to get help. I couldn't get it. And then I started acting up and I would ditch class to go to the local high school. I started hanging around with gang members and other people who made bad choices. And one day the nun, who I think was a vice principal or principal, she grabbed me by the arm and she said, "You're never going to be anything. You're going to be just like all those other Mexicans. You're going to be nothing." And that was pretty devastating. I went home and I told my mother what she said, and my mother went and talked to her. And she looked me in the face and said, "I never said any of that." And so at that point is when I realized I had to leave that school because I wasn't going to get what I needed. But I don't think I was ready to turn it around. And so I ended up going to the public high school where I had been cutting to go to. And I didn't do well there either. And then my mom sent me to my uncle's house in King City. I didn't do well either. And she shipped me off my senior year to an island where my aunt lived in the San Juan Islands in Washington State. And my senior class ended up having 9 students. And that's where I realized I had to turn it around, or I don't know where my life was going to go. So if you look at the cover of the book, the boy in the picture is kind of looking at the road, deciding which direction to go in. And one side is lighter and the other one's darker because at some point we got to make a choice as to which direction our life is going to lead. And fortunately for me, that experience on the island was what shaped my life and turned it around.
I definitely have some more questions about that experience that you had growing up and attending school on that small island in Washington. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, though, too, you mentioned, again, the harsh words from the nun. They motivated you, that you didn't get discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
You let those words actually motivate you, and you were motivated to prove her wrong. And can you tell us more about the moment that you actually, you were influenced to prove her wrong?
We all have an inner warrior. We have to bring that inner warrior out at times in our lives to pursue the things that we want, especially when things are hard. And when she said those words, I think something in me said, "I'm not who she thinks I am." And I have to, I can prove her wrong. And it's that inner warrior that came out in me. And I remember thinking, I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that I had to. And it wasn't until I went to the island in Washington that I met a math teacher. And the math teacher told me, "You know what? You can do it." Like every time, because I hated math, and he would say, "You don't hate math, you love math." And I'd say, "I can't do it." And he'd say, "You can do it." And I'd say, "This is too hard." And he'd be like, "It's so easy." So he was the growth mindset before the growth mindset. And he would encourage me, he would tutor me. And I share the story in my book where he would say, "Are you coming in for tutoring?" And I would be like, "Sure." And then I'd run to the bus. And the second day he'd say, "Are you coming in for tutoring?" And I would go, "Sure." And I'd run to the bus. And the third day, "Are you coming in for tutoring?" And "Sure." And I ran to the bus. And the fourth day, he asked me again. And I said, "Oh, this guy's never going to give up." And so I showed up for tutoring. And I think that's what started to change my life. And I think he started planting those seeds of positivity, like you can do it. It is possible. You can succeed. And he shifted my mindset. And so if you read my book, a lot of it is just shifting that mindset that people have. And I have a chapter called Mindset Matters, because it's how you want to perceive things. It's how you want to think about things and your success. And I think students need, and educators need to know, educators can look at students and say, "Hey, my student can succeed." Or have that belief that they can, no matter what their circumstances are. And I think the students from those difficult circumstances need somebody that believes in them, and they have to believe in themselves.
Reflecting on that experience, though, and the negative comments from the nun that you described in the book, and the impact that could have on child self-esteem, those negative comments,
Mm-hmm.
whether they come from, a nun, a teacher, a coach, an administrator, whoever is in a child's life, the impact that could have on a child's self-esteem and future aspirations. What advice would you give to educators on the importance of their words and how they can instead have a positive influence on students' lives?
I think sometimes, and I can't speak for all educators, but I think sometimes, they want to use a scare tactic, like, hey, if you don't turn it around, you're going to end up like this, right? Or, hey, if you don't do this, your life's going to end up a certain way, or you're going to go to jail, or you're going to end up on the streets, or you're going to end up, this. And I think that doesn't work. I think it's really just, being positive. It's really encouraging the student, and that's what I try to do with the students that I work with. I go, I will never put you down. I may get upset about the things that you do or the things that you say, but I'm going to teach you the right way. And there might be consequences, and and we're going to talk about it. But because of my experiences, I will never shoot somebody's dreams down or their thoughts or what they want, because words have the power to hold you back, or they have the power to lift you up. And I think as educators, we have to be mindful of the things we say, because what if I had listened to the nun and not chosen the other path? I could have been in a totally different situation or scenario, right? But something in me pushed forward and pushed me to pursue education. And ironically, I went back, and then when I became a vice principal, I remembered her story, and I said, I won't be that person. I won't be the one that puts a kid down or makes them feel bad. I mean, I may use a harsh tone, I may tell them the consequences, but I will still encourage them after the fact.
As you mentioned, the scared straight tactics, they don't work. Despite the long history of people trying to use that as a strategy. What really works is connecting with kids and building that rapport and doing what your mentor did, and Mr. Numbers, right?
Yes.
That's the kind of stuff that actually works. And the strategies you used, even as a mentor, which you mentioned in your book.
And I think it's important. I tell kids, I used to tell my high school students, the mentors you choose are going to help you to make the choices that you make in the future. So if you pick a positive mentor, then it could be a coach, it could be a teacher, it could be a pastor, a priest, it could be your neighbor. You want to find somebody who's a positive role model, right? Because it's easy to also find a negative role model, and then you make different choices in life. And so I always tell students, find the person you trust, but also ask yourself, are they making the right choices, and asking me to make the right choices.
No, that's good advice. And then you mentioned that moving to Washington and experiencing life on that small island, it was a transformative experience. You talk about the island and how different things were. Can you share more about how this move changed your perspective and what you learned from that experience?
Well, I think, and Ivan in the book and I talk about this, that sometimes you have to step out of we call it the bubble, right? We were in our bubble. So if you live in an area and your area is gang infested, or there's drugs or whatever the circumstances are, you become a part of that bubble. And sometimes that's all you know, right? And so stepping out of that bubble, you see things differently. When I was on the island, there were no gangs. I think we were the only Mexican family at the time. My senior class had 9 students. So it was surrounded by trees and the ocean, and the only way off the island, if you got in trouble, you had to take a ferry.
Or swim, right? Which at the time you said
the ice cold water where you'll freeze in 3 minutes, I think. And then
and you weren't a swimmer, I think you mentioned in the book, right?
I swim, but I have a fear of the ocean.
Yeah. So you were stuck. You were really stuck.
I was stuck, and the only thing to do on the island, the downtown is 1 block. There's a supermarket and a couple restaurants and a couple shops. And every Friday we would gather, like there was a teen center, and we would go there and listen to music or play games. They had pool and foosball, but that was where we'd hang out on Fridays. And so we'd go bike riding or hang out at the beach. So I think it was a place where I wasn't judged. Nobody knew my background, and like I said, it was something different from what I had been in, and it helped me to get a different perspective. And when that math teacher told me I could do it, I would go home. I would actually go with him for tutoring 1.5 to 2 hours. Then I'd walk home for 1.5 hours. It was a long walk. And then I'd eat dinner, but I would do my math homework because I knew the next day he was going to say, "Did you do your homework? Are you coming in today?" And so I think that just having, nobody judged me. I remember my senior project in high school. I wrote about gangs, and we were supposed to do a 15-minute presentation, and my presentation lasted, I think, 45 minutes to an hour. And the teacher said, "Hey, you should become a teacher." And I said, "Oh, hell no." I was like, "I can't do it." And but everything led down that path, and I became a teacher.
Oh, that's incredible. And I was going to ask you, talk more about Mr. Numbers, because he was the person in your life. There was a pivotal moment there, meeting Mr. Numbers. And, how did his mentorship influence your decision to become a teacher? I mean, was it that moment right there? What specific qualities or lessons from him made you strive to embody those your own teaching practices
Yeah.
as you became an educator?
Yeah, I think he was, the thing is, when he asked me, "Are you coming in today? Are you coming in today?" He never raised his voice at me. He never was rude or disrespectful. Um, I had already told him 4 times, like, "Sure," or 3 times, "I'll be there," and I didn't. And he could have said, "Well, you never come in," or he could have given up on me, and he didn't. And then when we'd sit there and we'd work on the math, and like hundreds of times, he'd say, "You love math. It's easy. You can do it." And I remember walking that 1.5 hours home going, "God, I hate math." And then I'd be like, "No, I love math." I can't
Wow.
do it. Oh, I can do it, because I could hear his voice in my head. And then I would go home and I'd work on it and turn it in. And it was just his positivity, the time that he gave me. I think it was, his encouraging words. He never judged me. He worked at the level I was at. And when I took the college test to pass in the CBES for teaching, it was a lot easier thanks to all the help that he provided. And so I think when I became a teacher, I said, "Okay, I'm going to use positive phrases." And in my book, I have a chapter on positive thinking and positivity. I also have, he helped me overcome my obstacles because he didn't judge me based on my background, and having been with gang members and getting in trouble. I also think that the fact that he gave me the time, because when I was at that all-girl Catholic school, I would try to find a mentor, a tutor, and I couldn't find that, or I felt the financial discrepancy there. So I think just his kindness. And I remember when I became a teacher, I was always positive with my students. I always stayed after school 2-3 days a week for an hour. I didn't ask for pay. I just stayed because I wanted them to have a place to come do homework, to avoid gangs. The school that I worked at was they used to bus kids in from a poorer area, a lot of gang affiliation. So I gave them a place to go. I helped them with their homework. So those were the qualities that he taught me. And I said, if I'm going to be a teacher, I want to be like him.
Such an interesting sort of juxtaposition too, when you think about the two people there, right? The nun who had those discouraging words, who would put, students down, versus Mr. Numbers, who is encouraging and provided opportunities for tutoring and tried to build students up. And when you look at the impact that both of them had, especially Mr. Numbers, of course, it really was transformative. And it's incredible that you embodied and took those qualities that you were taught and you passed that on to other students. And of course, you had an amazing impact on them, which we're going to get to here really soon. We have more with Adele, but up next, we are going to be doing our Educator Spotlight. Don't go anywhere. We've got plenty more questions for Adele, so stick with us. We are thrilled to feature Jessica Bautista for our Educator Spotlight segment. As a dedicated site manager at a local high school for a before and after school program, Jessica has demonstrated exceptional commitment and leadership in supporting student success. Each morning, she serves between 80 and 120 students, providing academic assistance, enrichment, social emotional learning activities, and open recreation. Under her management, this program has become the largest before and after school program in the district for the high schools, boasting the highest attendance rates. Jessica's tireless efforts and passion for education have made a significant impact for the lives of many students, fostering a positive and supportive learning environment. Her dedication to her students and her innovative approach to education make her an outstanding candidate for our Educator Spotlight. Congratulations, Jessica, for being featured on the Educator Spotlight segment, and thank you for all that you do for students. If you know of an educator who should be featured on the show, nominate them for our Educator Spotlight segment. Let's celebrate the incredible work and dedication of educators who are making a difference in their communities. All right, up next, we have more questions for our guest. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Ed Talk. We just had a wonderful Educator Spotlight segment, and now we're excited to dive back into our conversation with Adele Alvarez, the author of the book Follow Your Heart, a guidebook for teens. Adele, let's talk about Ivan's story, which is a powerful story in your book and an example of a student overcoming multiple obstacles and challenges. Again, Ivan's story, can you tell us more about Ivan's background?
So Ivan was actually, I think he was a sophomore when I met him, and he was in my class. He didn't want to do any work. He would say bad words. He struggled to read, and he was always getting in trouble, suspended for fighting, for drugs, for different things. And we didn't really have a connection. Like when I met him, it wasn't, he would try to avoid me like the plague. And then, but I would have the after school tutoring, and sometimes he would come in and he would just sit there, sometimes just to hang out. Sometimes he would try to do the work. And then one day he enrolled in a military boot camp, and it was in San Luis Obispo. It was like 4 hours away from my house. And I was a single mom with 2 kids. And his mom came up to me and said, "Hey, will you mentor him?" And I said, "Sure. What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, just a couple phone calls. That's it. And maybe a couple check-in. And you have to attend 1 training session." And I said, "Okay." Well, it turned out that I had to go every month to San Luis. And they would give him like 4 hours so we would, I'd get to take him to go eat and talk and just hang out. But if he had to be back they were very military, so he had to be back at a certain time, or they'd make him do push-ups and run. So he would, we would just talk, and I got to know him as a person. And, he would tell me, his family was struggling, financially, and, there were problems in their family, but he and I would talk. He had a lot of anger. And so I showed him how to kind of let go of that anger, which if you read my book, there's chapters on letting go of anger and finding forgiveness, and talking about it, or being happy in the present after that. And we would have a lot of conversations like that. And then when he finished the boot camp, I remember one day when I visited him at the boot camp, and it was the first time, and we weren't very close. I had to put a blindfold on and walk through a minefield, and it was all like sharp object, like it was like balls and just toys that you could step on that were, and he had to guide me through it without stepping on any of the objects. And I'm like, oh, great, I'm going to trust this kid. I walked through the minefield with the blindfold on. And so I walked through it. Luckily, I didn't step on anything till the end. And then I just learned, like, sometimes we just have to trust the process, right? And so we sat there, we talked, and then slowly but surely he just, he was very shy, but he came out of his shell, and we talked. And I told him after he finished the military boot camp, I said there was we had to stay in touch for a year, and we had to like meet once a month. And so I told him, I said, hey, he was a junior at the time. I said, you can either come back to the high school that I work at, but you're going to be expected to write a research project paper. And so it's going to be really hard because you've been out of school for a year, or you've been at the military camp for, the semester. And I said, or you can go to the continuation high school where they're going to have less credits. and you're going to be able to graduate and you don't have to write a big research paper. But he actually decided to go back to the high school I work at. And so he wrote the research paper. He did sometimes get in trouble, but he would come in all the time for tutoring. And I told him, come hang out in my room, just like Mr. Numbers did with me, lunch or recess or after school. So stay away from the gang members, because that's always like, you come back to the bubble, you're going to get called into it again. And he came in, but then he started bringing another friend of his. And this friend was similar, in trouble since freshman year, getting in, doing drugs, not making good choices. And I remember one time I took them both out to get something to eat. They weren't behaving appropriately. And I was ready to tell the other one, hey, we're done. We're not going to talk anymore. And I said, and I decided, I pulled, I was ready to go off like the nun went off on me. And I decided, okay, let me pull up my inner Mr. Numbers. And I said, you either need to turn it around or you're not welcome in my classroom anymore. And I said, I didn't like your disrespectful tone. And he turned it around. And he actually, he's the one that I told you just graduated from San Jose State a couple of years ago. And I saw him on his 10-year anniversary. In my last chapter, I talk about one important thing that I think for all students is they need to create goals. And so I said, where do you see yourself in 10 years from now? And I can't remember what he said, and I can't remember what Ivan said. But we laugh about it because we reviewed him like a year ago. And we're like, oh yeah, you're not married with 5 kids. You're not, you didn't travel to, Australia or whatever. But it's good for them to go, hey, I need to set some goals. I need to have something to work towards, and so I see them and I always had them set goals. I always didn't give up on them. I always had them, work and do their best. I listened to their crazy stories, the ones that you don't want to hear sometimes because, they're making stupid choices. But, looking at them now where they're at, and living, their, as the kids say nowadays, their best life, they're living their best life. And I think it's just part of that, mentorship. And I think it's just what I learned at the boot camp was you got to hear them no matter what they have to say. They're going to make mistakes and they're going to have to learn from them. But all you can do is just keep guiding them on the right direction, which goes back to the cover of the book, right? Picking the right choice and going the right way. And so I just think about that, and I've met all their friends and their crazy stories, but that's all you can do sometimes is just listen and guide them in the right direction and seeing where they're at now. And, I gave both of them a little, we used to have a freshman program called Compass. And so I found this little, I don't know if you've seen them at stationery stores, but they're like little circles and they have a compass. And I gave it to them on their graduation. I said, hey, don't forget to always go in the right direction. And when you veer off to the wrong direction, make sure you go back to the right one. And I saw him last week and he still carries that in his wallet. So 10 years later. So I think it's powerful to see some of these kids turn it around, and it's rewarding, and that's how I feel that Mr. Numbers didn't give up on me and I didn't give up on them.
And you never know the impact that you could have on a student. And what you did, that small gesture of getting that compass and giving it to that student. And of course, the fact that they carried it around today, that just goes to show how meaningful that moment was for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's incredible. Could you just real fast paint a picture of what those students were like in the classroom for those educators out there that might have similar students? What were they like in the classroom? And yeah, and then as a follow-up too, is again, 2-part question. You chose, despite their behaviors in the classroom, you chose to mentor both of those students. And I want to know what motivated you to be that mentor for them.
Having grown up with people that were gang affiliated or made poor choices, I knew their mentality. I knew how they, thought or how they felt for a lot of it. And I think I didn't have problems with the people that I grew up with because they saw me like family, right? It's that mentality. And so I think when I met them, some teachers would have wrote them off because, they were the kids that talk back in the classroom, or the one that shouts out that inappropriate comment, or the one that might say a cuss word, in front of the whole class that day, or the one that got into a fight in the quad at, lunchtime, or, they have a picture. I don't have it, but they have a picture. There was a corner by the gym. They used to always hang out at lunch, all the homies. And they said, hey, out of all that group, only 3 of us made it out, right? And so seeing their picture, I think I just felt like, I think what I do when I was a teacher is like, I think we need to use those restorative practices. I think we need to sit down and have a conversation. This is what you did wrong. This is why you did it wrong. And this is how it should be done or could be done. Why don't we practice? So in my book, I talk about a student, I can't remember the name I used in the book right now, where he had he would show up to class all the time without a pencil, right? And I think if you're the teacher, the 20th time that you're like, where's your pencil? And the kid said, hey, I forgot it. That was his typical line. And that day the teacher wasn't having it and yelled at him in front of the whole class. And the kid said, F you, and got suspended, right? And so he came up to me and he goes, hey, Miss Alvarez, the teacher came at me sideways. And I said, oh, yeah, what do you say? We talked about it. And he goes, well, I didn't bring a pencil to class. And he yelled at me. And I said, okay, so did you cuss him out because he told you forgot a pencil? Or did you cuss him out because he humiliated you in front of 30 other students? And he goes, the second one, right? And so I think if you can get them to recognize what caused them to do that, and go, okay, well, how could you have done it differently? Right? How could you have responded differently? How could you have reacted? Could you have come in with a pencil? Could you have been prepared and then you would have gotten cussed out? Or I said, maybe you need, and I told him, I said, you need to go apologize for cussing him out, but you also need to point out to the teacher that you didn't appreciate being called out in front of the entire class. And he goes, oh, hell no, I can't do that. And I said, and so in my book, I talk about giving those I messages. I felt embarrassed. And when did you feel embarrassed? When you called me out in front of the class. And why? Because I felt humiliated in front of everybody else. And that takes, especially if you're a gang member kid, that's not easy to do. And if you're a kid, it's not easy because you've never done it before sometimes. And so I coached him through it and he talked to the teacher. Did it revoke the suspension? No. But did it make it easier for him to go back to class? Yeah. Did it help him explain to the teacher what happened? Yes. And so that's the same approach I took with Ivan. That's the same approach I took with his friend Luis. Teaching them how to respond differently and what your expectations are. And I think as a parent, we do that. As educators, we do that. And sometimes we don't know. And so if we expect parents to respond differently, they may not know. Right. And so those are things that I would teach them. And so I think, but people always have a lot of patience and some people don't have the patience for that, especially when it's happening repeatedly. And there's times when it gets to be too much and they're not ready to hear it and they have to have consequences. But at some point they'll come back and go, okay, I remember you told me that, or I could try that or do it differently.
By the way, just to circle back real quick, when Ivan's mother approached you, to ask if you would mentor him, that's an 8-hour round trip that you did to mentor a student. With the limited time that we have, that's incredible, the dedication that you showed. But look at the impact that it did have on not just one, but 2 students' lives. And of course, I know you've mentored many other students and had an impact on them as well. But it's just incredible to take a look at that 8-hour drive that you did. Of course, it was worth the investment and the time and energy, but that's dedication.
Yeah, and it took a toll. My kids, I had to, because I would leave my kids to do that. And I said, and you have to remember, you have to have that balance. And as educators, I think, we can dedicate ourselves to the job, but I think we also have to remember our family. And we have to remember our own kids and our own selves. And because it is tiring, sometimes to work with kids that are at risk, right? But I think as educators, we have to find time. And what I did was I learned, hey, I could leave Saturday and go enjoy the beach, spend the night, and then go meet them for the session on Sunday and then drive home. And so I was able to find a way to make it work for me. It gave me, time for myself, and then I could come back and be there for my own children as well.
Do you have any advice for those educators out there who are looking to maybe mentor students?
I think you can always mentor, and it could be something as simple. I started a program at the high school actually after I mentored these kids at this student at the military boot camp. I got asked by my administrator, which is the one that trained me that I spoke about earlier. He said, "Hey, why don't we do a program for our at-risk high school students, the D's, the F's?" So I worked with all the kids that I call them my top 100, but they were the ones with D's and F's, suspension, expulsion, fresh out of juvenile hall. And I would work with them. And what I did was I would take some of them and pair them up with a mentor at the high school, and they meet once a week for lunch to review their grades, to talk about their goals, set goals, to kind of see where they needed help in the year. And there weren't as many support services as I see at my own district right now, but they had someone they could connect with. So it wasn't just me. It was like, hey, I can reach out to this teacher, that teacher, for help, or somebody they connected to. So that was something. I think it's just, if you want to help someone, there's ways. Start a club, be a coach, sign up to have a small group of students, or just reach out. My school, I have a teacher who does PBIS, and they can earn points and spend it to have lunch with their teacher, or they can buy like hey, breakfast with my teacher or something. And it's just a way for you to connect with students outside the classroom, because we all know that we have curriculum to get through and get ready for testing and the constraints. And so I think if you could just give a little bit of time somehow, some way, it could make a difference in a student's life. Just like sometimes, like I said, if I see a kid being good, hey, we're going to have a donut or a cookie in my office with a couple of students that I've seen turn it around, because you want them to acknowledge that. And they're going to remember that more than the math lesson, with Mr. Numbers, or they're going to remember just that time or that conversation or something else that might help them to take their next step.
And then for students out there, this show's for students, of course, too. But for those students who are out there who maybe are seeking a mentor, do you have any advice for them?
I think it's just find something with what you like. My nephew, I remember when he was in high school, he loved basketball, and he wasn't the best player, and I kid you not, and he would play maybe 2 minutes out of the whole game. And I said, hey, but think about the people you're meeting. Think about the workout you're getting. Think about the skills that you're building, just interpersonal and sports wise. And by the end of the season, he was playing like a quarter in the game. He got the most improved player. So I think I had another student who was on the DNF list, and he knew how to calculate exactly a 2.0 to play football. So it's finding the mentors that you need. Even in administration. I took a leap of faith and moved from the Bay Area to the Valley 6 years ago to pursue administration. My students, the ones at risk, were moving to Modesto, and I was like, "What's in Modesto?" And I applied, and I became an administrator, and I met like 3 amazing administrators that we would actually meet at Starbucks every month to clear our credential. And we joke around, we're like, hey, we're awesome admin, but we'd stay there till they kicked us out of Starbucks, and then they give us free food at the end. But you want to find people that are there, that are going to support you, that help you to get to that next level. And they're the people that I can call even today. They're the principals. One of them was a vice principal and became a principal. Then the next one was a vice principal and became a principal. The other one was already a principal. And then they all looked at me and said, who's next? And they were the ones that motivated me to go into the principalship. And so I think you find the people that are going to lift you up. And so along the way, like I said, they're people that I can, even today, even early, right before this meeting, I called one of them and was like, hey, how's it going? And what are you working on? And but they're the people that you can always turn to. And so I think it's just important. And I tell my kids that, my daughter, my son, hey, find the people that are going to help you at work or help you in life. to do what you want. And my daughter, like she's found a coworker that she can turn to, and she just joined like an ultimate frisbee team where she lives, and so it's just finding the people that are going to push you in the direction that you want to move in.
Well, thank you, Adele, for sharing these invaluable insights, your experiences, and your advice. They're incredibly helpful for our educators, mentors, and students alike. We've covered so much today, and I know our listeners have gained a lot from your wisdom, but we're not done yet. Up next, we have our education showcase, where we're going to highlight some amazing initiatives and resources in education. And don't go anywhere, Adele, she's going to be sticking around for our final word segment. And of course, she'll share some of her own resources as well. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Ed Talk. It's time for our Education Showcase segment. Today, we have some fantastic resources to share with you. But first, we're going to go ahead and give our guest on the show an opportunity to share more about her book and how you can purchase the book, and also other opportunities that she has to share.
All righty. So if you'd like to purchase my book, it is available on Amazon. You just got to look for Follow Your Heart, a guidebook for teens by Adele Alvarez. If you'd like to email me, you can always go to adelealvarezwrites@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook under Adele Alvarez, and on Instagram under Adele Alvarez_writes. So you can follow me, reach out to me. I'd be happy to share my message with all of you, and I hope that you gain some valuable insights today.
Adele's an incredible public speaker, and so if you want to reach out to her for that, of course, I know that you get booked pretty quickly. So if people out there, school districts, if they want to reach out to you after school programs, are they able to reach out to you to book you to come onto their campus to speak?
Yes, you can reach me via email, and I'll repeat that again. It's Adele Alvarez Writes, or Adele Alvarez 1@gmail.com. I'd be happy to come and speak and present to staff members or to students, or even community, ELAC meetings. Sometimes I present to parents. I do speak Spanish and English. So a lot of times my book is not in Spanish, but the messages can be conveyed to them as well. And I think it's important for parents to hear some of these stories, because sometimes they also wonder, what can I do to help my own child?
This is not just a guidebook for teens. This is a book for everybody. I mean, school administrators, for teachers, for parents. Isn't that correct?
It is, and the beauty of it too is, and I didn't mention this earlier, but every chapter refers back to a book that has inspired or changed my life. And so I relate. I was an English teacher, so I do relate a story or a book to my life. And every chapter has activities that either I've had adults complete them, and I've had students as well. But just kind of reflective activities that make them question their own way of being and thinking, and hopefully can change to find, let go of anger, or find closure, or question beliefs, or even for high school students, like how to succeed in high school. But I've had a lot of adults read it and go, you know what, this is not just for kids. It's helped change my life as well.
Yeah, and again, it's no wonder why your book is doing so well. As I looked through it and I saw all those resources, I thought these are just so powerful and incredible resources for everybody. One other thing too, in your book, you have a lot of quotes in there.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful quotes from like Gandhi and Dr. King. And so it's really an inspiring book.
Yeah, I had read other books similar, and I've always been one that loves quotes. And I said, I want one quote that captures, the message for the chapter. And the first book I alluded to was The Alchemist, and it was about a boy who goes in search of a personal treasure and overcomes all his obstacles. And I started with the quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And so I think if you read the book, you're taking that first step to begin to transform your life, to become the phoenix, or to make better choices in your life, to learn from it, and know that, the beauty of life is that you can change your life at any moment and any time.
Thank you for writing that book, and of course for your powerful messages. And again, stay tuned because Adele is going to be sticking around for our final word segment here in a little bit. But first, a few other resources to share with you. Youth.gov, it's a website. Youth.gov has a comprehensive list of resources and information to support youth, including those at risk. The website offers a variety of tools, programs, and initiatives across multiple areas, such as mental health, substance abuse prevention, and educational support. They also provide resources for building resilience and developing life skills and creating positive youth development opportunities. Okay, so the next one we have is Edutopia, edutopia.org. This is part of the George Lucas Educational Foundation initiative, provides innovative resources and research for educators. Their website offers articles, videos, and guides on best practices for teaching and supporting at-risk students, and much more, of course. Edutopia focuses on promoting holistic and inclusive education that meets the needs of diverse learners, providing practical strategies for classroom and school-wide interventions. These resources are invaluable for supporting students who might be facing challenges. Whether you're an educator, parent, or mentor, these tools can help you provide the support that at-risk students need to thrive. Stay with us because, again, Adele Alvarez will be sticking around for our final word segment, where she will share some last thoughts. You won't want to miss it. All right, welcome back to the Ed Talk as we wrap up today's episode titled From Struggles to Strength, Real-Life Success Stories, How Vulnerable Teens Triumph Against the Odds. I want to take a moment to reflect on the powerful stories and insights we've heard today from Adele Alvarez. Throughout the episode, we've delved into the challenges faced by vulnerable students who, against all odds, have found a way to rise above their circumstances and achieve success. These stories are a testament to the incredible resilience and determination that does exist within each and every single one of us. But these triumphs, they don't happen in isolation. Behind every success story is often a mentor, a guide, someone who believes in the potential of another person, even when they may not believe in themselves. Being a mentor, it's not just about providing guidance or sharing wisdom. It's about offering support, encouragement, and a belief in the possibilities of what someone can achieve. Adele shared with us the transformative power of mentorship in her life and in the lives of her students. When we take the time to mentor others, we are planting seeds of hope and confidence. We're helping to shape futures and to build stronger communities. To those listening today, I encourage you to think about the impact you can have as a mentor. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a coach, or a friend, your support can make a world of a difference. Reach out to those who need a guiding hand. Offer your time, your experience, and most importantly, your belief in their potential. Remember that the journey from struggles to strength, it's not an easy one, but with the right support, it's a journey that can lead to incredible achievements. Every young person deserves the chance to realize their dreams, their hope, their potential. And with mentors like you, we can help make those dreams a reality. So let's take the opportunity to be change makers. Let's be the mentors who inspire and uplift. Together, we can help vulnerable teens and students triumph against the odds and transform their struggles into stories of strength and success, much like the ones we heard today. Stay tuned because Adele will be sharing her final thoughts with us in our final word segment. Stay tuned. All right, Adele, the stage is all yours to share your final thoughts in our final word segment.
Well, I wanted to share in my book, I picked this one, there's a wheel here, and the wheel in the middle represents yourself, and everything around it are kind of your thoughts, right? Or the negative words or phrases that somebody else has said to you or you've said to yourself. And I always encourage people to, if you had someone like the nun who said something negative to you, or somebody that put you down or didn't believe in you, or if you had, kind of letting that go, or even people that sometimes pick you up or put you, first, it starts with you. And you need to start shifting your own mindset about yourself, and you need to start, believing in yourself and knowing that you can achieve, whatever you want if you follow your heart and you do what you think is best for you. And so It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, whether it's the nun, whether it's Mr. Numbers. I mean, I'm grateful for both of them. But what I learned at the end of this book, it's what we do for ourselves and how we make our lives better and take those next steps. And then if we're living our best lives, as the kids like to say, then we can help the other kids by mentoring them or another teacher or another person in our lives. So it starts with us, and then it moves forward to everybody. It trickles down to everybody else.
Thank you, Adele, so much. That brings us to the end of today's episode of the Ed Talk. And again, Adele, I want to extend my heartfelt thank you to you for your leadership, courage, unwavering support of students. Your journey and insights have truly inspired us all. Thank you for being on the show and for sharing your incredible story.
All right. Thank you for having me. And I can't wait to listen to it all over again.
Awesome. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in and for your continued support. Your engagement and feedback mean the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with others. Your support helps us to continue to bring you these important and inspiring stories. Remember, every share and subscription makes a difference and allows us to keep doing what we're doing here today. Thank you for being a part of the Ed Talk community and the Ed Talk family. Don't forget to join us for the next episode of the Ed Talk, where we are uniting education's top thinkers and leaders. Have a great day.